The smell of clover and wild thyme filled his lungs as Nolan Drayton opened his eyes to a sky gone purple with twilight. And for one perfect moment before memory returned, he felt nothing but peace. Then confusion arrived, because his head was pillowed on something soft and warm that was decidedly not grass. And when he tilted his gaze upward, he found himself looking into the face of an orc girl staring down at him with an expression of absolute mortification. She had green skin the color of new leaves, small tusks that pressed against her lower lip, and dark hair braided back from pointed ears. Her hand rested in his hair, fingers curled loosely as though she had been stroking it and forgotten to stop. They stared at each other for 3 heartbeats before she snatched her hand back. "I can explain," she said. "Please do." Nolan sat up slowly, his back protesting the hours on the ground. The meadow around them had transformed in his sleep, afternoon gold traded for evening shadow. He had walked out here after the noon meal, bone-tired from another sleepless night in his cottage, and laid down just to rest his eyes. That had been hours ago. The orc girl drew her knees up, hugging them. She wore a simple tunic and leather trousers, practical clothes for traveling. "You were sleeping very close to the edge." She gestured toward the cliff boundary of the meadow where the land dropped away into a steep ravine. "I saw you roll twice. I thought you would fall, so I came over and—" She made a helpless gesture with both hands. "I meant to wake you, but you looked so peaceful. And then I thought I would wait just a moment more, and then it was an hour, and then—" She trailed off, color darkening her cheeks. "I am Zara Kova. I am very sorry." Nolan looked at the cliff edge, perhaps 6 feet from where he had apparently been sleeping. Far enough that he might not have rolled that far, close enough that he might have. "Nolan Drayton," he said, "and I suppose I should thank you." "You do not have to thank me for sitting here like a fool watching a stranger sleep." Zara's voice was flat with embarrassment. That is not something people thank each other for. Despite himself, Nolan felt the corner of his mouth twitch. "What were you doing in the meadow, gathering feverfew?" She showed him a basket beside her, half filled with the small white flowers. "My grandmother needs it for headaches. What were you doing sleeping so close to a cliff?" That was a harder question to answer. Nolan looked out over the meadow at the sea of wildflowers now gray in the fading light. This place sat exactly between his village of Millbrook and the orc settlement in the hills, land that both communities claimed and neither controlled. He came here because it was empty, because it was quiet, because he could close his eyes here without the walls of his cottage pressing in on him. "I was tired," he said finally. Zara waited as though expecting more. When nothing came, she nodded slowly. "I should go. My family will worry. Do you come here often, to gather plants?" She paused in reaching for her basket. "Sometimes. The feverfew grows well here. And stonecrop in the rocky parts. My grandmother is a healer and she taught me which plants are useful." She stood, brushing grass from her clothes. "You should not sleep so near the edge. Even if someone is there to keep you from rolling off, it is not safe." Nolan got to his feet as well, feeling the stiffness in his joints. He was 32, not an old man by any measure, but he felt ancient some days. "I will try to be more careful." "Good." Zara picked up her basket, hesitated, then added, "I truly am sorry for the—" She gestured vaguely between them. "All of it. I have had worse wakings." The words came out before Nolan could stop them, and they hung in the air between them, carrying more weight than he had intended. He cleared his throat. "Go on before it gets full dark. The path down is tricky." She nodded and turned away, then paused after 3 steps. "Will you be here again?" The question surprised him. "Probably." "Why?" "So I know whether I need to worry about finding you at the bottom of the ravine." She said it matter-of-factly, without humor, and Nolan found himself caught between offense and amusement. I have been coming here for months without falling off anything. You have been coming here for months without anyone watching you sleep either, as far as I know." This time there was the faintest trace of humor in Zara's voice. "Try to stay alive, Nolan Drayton." She walked away through the meadow, her basket swinging at her side, and Nolan watched until she disappeared down the far trail toward the hills. Then he turned and made his own way back toward Millbrook, his mind turning over the strange encounter like a puzzle with missing pieces. The village was settling into evening routines when he arrived. Nolan waved to a few neighbors but did not stop to chat, heading straight for his cottage at the edge of town. It was a good house, solid stone and timber, with a vegetable garden out back and a workshop where he did carpentry when the mood struck him. He had built most of it himself, back when such projects had seemed to matter. Inside, he lit a single lamp and sat at his table without bothering to make supper. The cottage was too quiet, the kind of quiet that pressed against his ears and made his thoughts too loud. After 10 minutes, he stood again and went out to the workshop, where at least he could keep his hands busy. He worked until his eyes burned with fatigue, planing boards for a dresser someone in the village had commissioned. When he finally returned to the cottage and lay down on his bed, sleep took him immediately, heavy and dreamless. The next day followed the pattern of too many recent days. Up before dawn, work in the garden, walk to the village proper to check if anyone needed carpentry or repair work. Long hours filling the time with anything that required enough focus to quiet his thoughts. By afternoon, he found himself walking back toward the meadow without quite deciding to. The day was warm, the sky scattered with high clouds. Nolan told himself he was just going for a walk, that he did not have to sleep there, that he could simply enjoy the fresh air and wildflowers. But his body knew the way, and when he reached his usual spot, he lay down in the grass and closed his eyes. He did not mean to sleep. But the sun was warm and the breeze was gentle, and the weight of another bad night pulled at him like an anchor, and he drifted off without quite meaning to. When he woke, the sun had shifted considerably westward, and Zara Kova was sitting a few yards away with her basket beside her, carefully not looking at him. Nolan sat up. "How long have you been there?" "Not long." She did not meet his eyes. "I just arrived. I was being quiet so as not to disturb you, and you were watching me sleep again." "I was not." The protest came too quickly, and color flooded her cheeks. "I was gathering plants. You just happened to be here." Nolan rubbed his face, trying to shake off the cobwebs of sleep. In daylight, Zara looked younger than he had first thought, perhaps 20 or 21. Her dark hair was braided in a different pattern today, wound close to her skull in intricate loops. She wore the same practical traveling clothes, but he noticed a leather cord around her neck with some kind of carved stone pendant. "I thought you gathered feverfew 2 days ago," he said. "I did. Today I am looking for broadleaf plantain, for poultices." She showed him a few of the wide-leafed plants in her basket. "It grows near the stream on the north side, and you just happened to come back this way." Zara finally met his eyes, her expression somewhere between defensive and sheepish. "I wanted to make sure you had not fallen off the cliff." "Is that so strange?" It was strange, actually, but Nolan found he did not mind. Something about her directness was refreshing after months of careful interactions with villagers who tiptoed around his grief. "I am still alive, as you can see." "Good." She turned her attention back to her basket, sorting through the plants. "You should eat something. You look terrible." "Thank you for that. I mean, you look thin. And tired." "When did you last have a proper meal?" Nolan tried to remember. He had eaten something yesterday, he thought. "Bread, probably. Maybe some cheese." "I eat. Not enough, clearly." Zara reached into a pouch at her belt and pulled out a cloth-wrapped bundle which she tossed to him. "Here." He caught it reflexively and unwrapped it to find a thick piece of travel bread studded with seeds and dried fruit. His stomach growled at the sight of it. "This is yours. I brought extra. Eat it." The bread was dense and slightly sweet, clearly made by someone who knew what they were doing. Nolan ate half of it before his manners caught up with him. "This is very good. My mother makes it." Zara was back to sorting plants, but he caught the pleased note in her voice. "She always sends more than I need when I go plant gathering." They sat in silence for a while, Nolan eating and Zara working through her basket. The quiet was comfortable in a way Nolan had not experienced in months. Most silences felt heavy to him now, weighted with things unsaid. This one simply felt like two people existing in the same space without needing to fill it with words. "Why do you come here?" Zara asked eventually. "To this meadow, I mean. It is a long walk from the village." Nolan considered how to answer that. The truth was complicated and painful and not something he shared with anyone, let alone a stranger. But something about Zara made him want to be honest. "My wife died a year ago," he said quietly. "Fever, very sudden. We had only been married 3 years. The cottage is too empty now, too quiet. I sleep better out here." Zara's hands stilled in her work. She did not say she was sorry, which Nolan appreciated. Everyone said they were sorry and it never helped. "What was her name?" "Marion. She was a weaver. Made the most beautiful cloth you have ever seen." He could picture her at her loom, her hands moving with swift precision, her face peaceful in concentration. "She loved colors. Our cottage has more bright fabric than any 3 houses combined." "That sounds lovely." "It is. It also reminds me of her every time I look at it." Nolan finished the bread and folded the cloth carefully. "What about you? Why do you come to this meadow? There must be plants closer to your settlement." "There are." Zara went back to sorting, her movements precise. "But I like the walk. And my grandmother says the plants that grow in neutral ground are stronger, that they take power from being neither here nor there, belonging to no one." She paused. "Also, it is quiet here. My family is large and loud. Sometimes I need space." Nolan understood that feeling, though his problem was the opposite. Too much space, too much quiet. "How many in your family?" 6 siblings, plus my parents and grandparents, all in the same house. And half the time my aunt and uncle and their children are there too. It is chaos." But she said it with warmth, clearly more fond than frustrated. "What about you?" "Just me now. My parents died when I was young. Marion had a brother in another village, but we did not see him much." The weight of that settled between them. Zara looked at him for a long moment, her dark eyes thoughtful. "You must be very lonely." Simple words, but they hit Nolan like a fist to the chest. He had to look away, focusing on the distant line of hills. "Some days are harder than others. And the meadow helps. It does not fix anything. But out here, at least I can sleep without dreaming about her empty chair at the table, without waking up reaching for someone who is not there." He had never said that out loud before. The words felt like stones he had been carrying and could finally set down. Zara nodded slowly. "Then you should keep coming here, for as long as it helps. Your people might object. I know there has been talk in the village about this land, about whether it belongs to us or to the orc clans. Let them talk. The land belongs to itself." Zara stood, brushing off her clothes. "I should go." But Nolan Drayton, try to sleep a bit further from the cliff edge, yes. "I will not always be here to keep you from rolling off." "Will you be here again?" The question came out before he could stop it, and Zara paused with her basket in hand. "Probably. I need to gather chamomile in a few days. It grows near the stream. Then I will try not to die before then." The corner of her mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "See that you do not." She left, and Nolan sat in the meadow until the sun touched the horizon, feeling something he had not felt in a very long time. Not happiness exactly, but a small lightening of the constant weight he carried. The beginning of something he did not have a name for yet. Over the next 2 weeks, a pattern emerged. Nolan would come to the meadow in the afternoon, sometimes sleeping, sometimes just sitting among the wildflowers. Zara would appear, always with her basket and a reason for being there, and they would talk. Small conversations at first, carefully neutral topics. The weather, the plants she was gathering, the carpentry projects Nolan was working on. But gradually the conversations deepened. Nolan told her about building his cottage, about learning carpentry from the old craftsman who had taken him in after his parents died. Zara told him about studying healing with her grandmother, about the careful patience required to learn which plants could save a life and which could end it. They talked about books they had read, about the stories their peoples told, about the small frustrations and joys of daily life. Nolan found himself looking forward to the meadow in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. He would catch himself wondering what Zara would be gathering that day, what new thing he might learn about her. She had a dry sense of humor that caught him off guard, a tendency to say exactly what she thought without artifice or manipulation. After so many months of people handling him carefully, her bluntness was like cold water, shocking and reviving. For her part, Zara seemed to relax around him more with each meeting. She smiled more readily, laughed at his occasional attempts at humor. Sometimes she would sit close enough that he could see the fine details of her skin, the small scar on her chin, the way her tusks pressed small dents into her lower lip when she concentrated. He was aware, in a distant way, that he was starting to feel something. But he pushed the thought away every time it surfaced. Marion had been gone barely a year. It was too soon. And even if it were not too soon, Zara was an orc and he was human, and that alone made the thought absurd. Except she did not feel absurd. She felt like the first real thing in his life since Marion died. 3 weeks after their first meeting, Nolan arrived at the meadow to find Zara already there, sitting in the grass with her basket beside her and her face troubled. He sat down next to her without preamble. "What is wrong?" She looked at him, seemed to consider not answering, then sighed. "My uncle came to visit last night. He heard I have been coming to this meadow. He says I should not, that it is too close to human territory, that your people might hurt me." "Would they? I do not know." "Would yours hurt me if they found me here?" Nolan thought about it honestly. "Some might try. Others would just tell you to leave. A few would not care at all." He paused. "I would not let anyone hurt you. You cannot promise that. You are one man." "I am one man who knows how to swing an axe and has a reputation for being stubborn." He said it lightly, but meant every word. "What did you tell your uncle?" "That the meadow is neutral ground and I have as much right to be here as anyone." Zara pulled up a handful of grass, letting it fall through her fingers. He was not happy. "He says if humans come here and try to claim it, there will be trouble. There is always talk about this land, but no one has tried to claim it in the 5 years I have lived in Millbrook. Talk can turn into action quickly." Zara looked at him seriously. "My uncle is not the only one who thinks this way. Some of the elders in my clan have been saying we should formally claim the meadow, draw a boundary line and defend it." Nolan felt something cold settle in his stomach. "And in my village, there are men who say the same thing. That this land is too valuable to leave empty, that we should build houses here or graze cattle." They sat in silence, the weight of the problem settling over them. The meadow had been neutral ground for as long as anyone could remember, a buffer zone between the two communities. If either side claimed it, the fragile peace would shatter. "We should stop meeting here," Zara said quietly. "If someone sees us, it will make things worse. They will say we are conspiring or that one of us is spying for the other side. Is that what you want? She looked at him, her dark eyes searching his face. No, but what I want does not matter if it causes trouble for our peoples. Nolan reached out and took her hand without thinking, then nearly pulled back when he realized what he had done. But Zara's fingers curled around his, holding on. Her hand was warm and strong, calloused from work. I do not want to stop seeing you, he said. The admission felt dangerous, like standing at the edge of the cliff Zara had kept him from rolling off that first day. These afternoons have been. They are the best part of my days now. Zara's breath caught. Nolan. I know it is complicated, I know it might cause problems. But I am not ready to give this up. He tightened his grip on her hand. Are you? She was quiet for a long moment, her thumb moving slowly over his knuckles. No, she said finally. I am not ready either, She paused, seeming to gather courage. I think I started caring about you that first day. Watching you sleep, you looked so peaceful. I wondered who you were, what made you smile, what stories you carried. And every time we talk, I want to know more. I want to keep knowing you. The words settled into Nolan's chest like warmth spreading from a hearth. He had been alone for so long, locked in his grief like a man trapped in ice. But here was Zara, green-skinned and tusked and completely unlike anyone he had ever known, melting through that ice with her directness and her humor and her fierce, practical kindness. Then we keep meeting, he said. Carefully. We tell no one, just for a while until we understand what this is. What do you think it is? Nolan looked at their joined hands, at the contrast of her green skin against his paler tones. I think it might be important. I think it might be something I need, even if I do not entirely understand it yet. I think that too. Zara squeezed his hand once, then released it, standing. But we have to be smart about this. If we are seen together, people will ask questions we cannot answer. Then we will be careful. They agreed to keep meeting but to vary their times and to approach the meadow from different directions. To tell no one about each other. To keep this fragile new thing between them protected until they understood what it was growing into over the following weeks. As summer deepened toward autumn, the meetings continued. But now they carried the weight of secrecy, the knowledge that what they were doing could cause real harm if discovered. Nolan found himself constantly aware of the risk, checking over his shoulder as he walked to the meadow, making sure no one from the village followed him. But the risk made the time they had more precious. Every conversation felt stolen, a gift he did not deserve. Zara told him about her grandmother's teachings, about the complex relationships between plants and seasons and the land itself. Nolan told her about Marion, about the guilt he sometimes felt that he was happy again, that he was here with Zara instead of home with his grief. Grief is not a debt you have to pay forever, Zara said one afternoon, lying in the grass beside him and watching clouds drift overhead. Marion would not want you to be miserable for the rest of your life. How do you know? Because you said she loved colors. She loved bright things. Why would someone like that want the person they love to live in grayness? It was such a simple observation, but it struck Nolan like a revelation. He thought of Marion at her loom, her face bright with pleasure when she finished a particularly complex pattern. She had been joy personified, finding delight in small things. She would have hated to see him hollow and exhausted. You are right, he said quietly. She would have told me to get out of the house and live my life. So live it. Zara turned her head to look at him, her face serious. Whatever this is between us, it is part of living. Do not feel guilty for it. Nolan reached over and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her pointed ear, letting his fingers linger against her cheek. When did you get so wise? My grandmother says I was born old. But she leaned into his touch, her eyes closing briefly. Nolan, I have to tell you something. The seriousness in her tone made him tense. What is it? My clan is meeting tomorrow to discuss the meadow. My uncle and some of the elders want to formally claim it to send a message to your village that this land is ours. I am supposed to support the claim. Will you? I do not know. If I argue against it, they will ask why, and I cannot tell them the truth. Nolan sat up, his mind racing. My village council is meeting next week. There are men there who want to do the same thing, claim the meadow for Millbrook. If both sides make formal claims at the same time, there will be a confrontation. Zara sat up as well, hugging her knees. And someone will get hurt. They looked at each other, the weight of the situation pressing down on them. The meadow had been their sanctuary, the place where they could exist outside the complications of their two worlds. But those worlds were closing in, and soon there would be nowhere to hide. We could run away, Nolan said, half joking. Just leave, go somewhere neither of our peoples would find us. And abandon our families, our homes. Zara shook her head. You do not mean that. No, but I wish I did. He took her hand, linking their fingers. There has to be another way. If there is, I do not see it. One side will claim the meadow, or both will, and either way there will be conflict, and we will be on opposite sides of it. The thought of being on opposite sides from Zara felt fundamentally wrong to Nolan, like trying to walk in two directions at once. Over these months, she had become essential to him in a way he had not fully recognized until now. Not a replacement for Marion, but something different and equally important. A new beginning, a reason to wake up looking forward to the day. I will not fight you, he said. No matter what happens, I will not be on a side that puts me against you. You might not have a choice. There is always a choice. Zara looked at him with an expression that was equal parts frustration and affection. You are a stubborn man, Nolan Drayton. So I have been told. He pulled her close, and she came willingly, resting her head against his shoulder. They sat like that for a long time, holding each other in the fading afternoon light, both of them afraid that this might be one of the last peaceful moments they would have. When Zara finally left, Nolan stayed in the meadow until full dark, trying to think of a solution. But every path he considered led to the same conclusion. Conflict was coming, and when it arrived it would tear apart the fragile thing he and Zara had built. The next 3 days were tense. Nolan heard through village gossip that the orc clans were being more aggressive, that hunters had seen orc scouts near the meadow. In response, some of the younger men in Millbrook started talking about forming patrols, about making sure no orcs encroached on what they considered village land. Nolan kept his head down and his mouth shut, but he felt like he was walking a tightrope. Any wrong word could reveal his connection to Zara, could turn his neighbors against him. On the 4th day, he went to the meadow despite the risk, desperate to see Zara and make sure she was safe. But she was not there. He waited for 2 hours, his anxiety growing with every passing minute. Had something happened to her? Had her family found out about their meetings? He returned the next day and the next, but Zara did not come. The meadow felt empty without her, hollow in a way it had not been even in his worst grief. He had not realized how much of his peace came from her presence until she was gone. On the 7th day, when Nolan was beginning to despair, he arrived at the meadow to find Zara sitting in their usual spot with her head in her hands. He ran to her, dropping to his knees beside her. What happened? Are you hurt? She looked up, and he saw tear tracks on her cheeks. They are sending warriors tomorrow. 20 of them, to occupy the meadow and build markers showing it belongs to the clans. My uncle is leading them. Millbrook is doing the same thing. The council voted 3 days ago. They are sending men tomorrow morning to claim the land. They stared at each other, the terrible symmetry of it settling over them. Both sides would arrive at the meadow tomorrow, both expecting to claim it unopposed, both ready to fight if challenged. There will be blood, Zara said quietly. My uncle is a good man, but he is proud. He will not back down if your people are here, and I know your village men will not retreat either. We have to stop this. How? Neither of us has the authority to call off our side, and if we try to warn one or the other, we will have to explain how we know. They will find out about us. Nolan took both her hands in his, holding tight. An idea was forming, wild and probably foolish, but it was the only thing he could think of. What if we give them something else to focus on? What if we offer a different solution? What kind of solution? What if the meadow becomes shared ground, not claimed by either side but jointly held? A place where both humans and orcs can come freely, where disputes are settled by discussion instead of force. Zara's eyes widened. The elders would never agree to that. They want full control. They want security. They want to know that this land will not be used against them. Nolan was thinking out loud now, the pieces clicking together. What if we propose a treaty? The meadow stays neutral, but both sides acknowledge each other's right to use it. No buildings, no permanent occupation. Just shared common ground. Why would they agree to that when both sides think they can take full control? Because if both groups show up tomorrow ready to fight, people will die. Our peoples have avoided open conflict for years. Nobody really wants war. He squeezed her hands. And because we will make the proposal together, human and orc standing united, showing them that cooperation is possible. They will ask why we care, why you and I would work together on this. Nolan took a deep breath. This was the cliff edge, the point of no return. Then we tell them the truth, that we have been meeting here for months, that we care about each other, that we want peace because we want a future together. Zara went very still. You are talking about declaring our relationship publicly. I am talking about making it impossible for them to ignore us. If we stand together tomorrow, if we propose this treaty and back it with our own commitment to each other, they will have to listen. It will be too dramatic to dismiss. It could also get us both killed. Or cast out from our families. It could, but doing nothing will definitely lead to bloodshed. Nolan pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. I know it is a risk. I know I am asking you to sacrifice your safety, your place in your community. But Zara, I cannot let tomorrow happen without trying to stop it, and I cannot imagine doing this without you. She was crying again, but she was also smiling. You really are the most stubborn man I have ever met. Is that a yes? It is an absolutely reckless, probably suicidal, insane yes. She kissed him then, fierce and quick. We are going to do this. We are going to stand in that meadow tomorrow and dare our peoples to see past their fear. Together. Together. They spent the rest of the afternoon planning. They would arrive at the meadow before either group at first light. They would plant themselves in the center and refuse to move. When both sides arrived, they would make their proposal clearly and publicly. A treaty of shared ground, sealed by the union of a human and an orc. A symbolic bridge between the two communities. It was audacious and possibly foolish, but it was also the only plan they had. When Zara finally left, she kissed Nolan again, longer this time, and whispered, Whatever happens tomorrow, I do not regret this. I do not regret you, nor I you. Nolan barely slept that night. He kept thinking of all the ways their plan could go wrong, all the ways it could end in violence or exile or worse. But he also thought about the alternative, doing nothing, watching the two groups clash, possibly watching Zara be hurt or killed in the conflict. That was unbearable. Better to stand and fight for the possibility of peace, even if the odds were against them. He rose before dawn and walked to the meadow through the gray pre-light, his heart pounding. Zara was already there, wearing what looked like formal clothing from her clan, a tunic embroidered with geometric patterns and a woven belt. She looked beautiful and terrified and determined. "Ready?" she asked. "No, but we are doing this anyway." They stood together in the center of the meadow, hands clasped, and waited as the sun rose. The meadow was beautiful in the early light, wildflowers glowing gold and purple and white, the grass heavy with dew. Nolan thought that if he was going to take a stand anywhere, this was the right place. This land that had given him peace when he needed it most, that had brought Zara into his life. They did not have to wait long. The warriors from Zara's clan arrived first, 20 strong orcs in leather armor and carrying weapons. Nolan recognized Zara's uncle at the front, a broad-shouldered man with graying hair and a stern face. He stopped short when he saw them, his expression shifting from surprise to confusion to anger. "Zara, what are you doing here? Who is this human?" Before she could answer, the group from Millbrook arrived from the other direction. 15 men, most carrying farming tools repurposed as weapons. Nolan recognized the village headman, Marcus Dalton, a grizzled veteran who had seen combat in his youth. Marcus's face went hard when he saw the orc warriors. "Nolan, step away from that orc girl. There is about to be trouble." "No," Nolan's voice came out stronger than he felt. "There does not have to be trouble. We have another solution." Both groups were fanning out now, forming rough lines facing each other with Nolan and Zara in the middle. The air was thick with tension, hands gripping weapons, everyone waiting for the first move. Zara spoke up, her voice carrying across the meadow. "This land has been neutral ground for longer than any of us have been alive. Both our peoples have used it, and neither has claimed it. Today you come to change that, to draw lines and declare ownership. But there is another way. We will not share this land with humans." That was Zara's uncle, his voice harsh. "This meadow is too close to our territory. We need to control it for our own security." Marcus shot back immediately. "You have the hills. This meadow sits between us, and Millbrook has just as much right to it as your clan. More, since we have lived here longer. We have lived in these hills for generations. So have we lived in this valley." The shouting was starting to escalate, and Nolan could see hands tightening on weapons. Any moment now someone would make the first aggressive move, and it would all spiral into violence. "Stop!" Nolan's shout cut through the noise. "Listen to us. There is a way for both sides to win here." Marcus looked at him with something like pity. "Nolan, I know you have been through a hard time since Marion died, but this is not your concern. Get out of the way and let us handle this." "It is my concern. This meadow has been my sanctuary. It is where I learned to live again after losing my wife, and it is where I met Zara." He pulled Zara closer, making their connection obvious. "She is the reason I wake up wanting to face the day. She is the reason I have hope again." A ripple of shock went through both groups. Zara's uncle looked like he had been struck. "You have been meeting a human. In secret." "Zara, have you lost your mind?" "No, uncle. I have found something worth fighting for." Zara's voice shook but did not waver. "Nolan and I have been meeting in this meadow for months. We have talked, laughed, shared our lives. He is a good man, and I care deeply for him. And because we both love this place, we cannot stand by and watch you destroy it with violence. We propose a treaty," Nolan said. "This meadow becomes shared common ground. Both communities have free access for gathering, for grazing, for whatever peaceful purposes they need. No permanent structures, no military presence, just shared land." "That is absurd," one of the Millbrook men said. "Why would we share when we can claim it for ourselves?" "Because claiming it means fighting for it," Zara answered. "Look at your group, look at ours. If you clash here today, people will die. Maybe your friends, maybe your family. Is this meadow worth that blood?" There was a moment of silence as both sides considered this. Nolan could see the calculation happening, the weighing of pride against practicality. Then Zara's uncle spoke, his voice cold. "And why should we trust that this is not some human trick, that Nolan has not simply seduced you to soften our position?" "Because I am willing to stake my life on this treaty," Nolan said. "Zara and I propose to seal this agreement with our own union. A marriage between human and orc, symbolizing the bond between our communities. If we can build a life together, spanning our differences, then surely our peoples can share a meadow." The shock this time was even greater. Someone on the orc side laughed, a harsh sound. "You want to marry into the clans? A human? They will never allow it. And Millbrook will never allow one of our own to marry an orc," Marcus added. But he sounded less certain than before, his eyes moving between Nolan and Zara with something like curiosity. "Then both sides will have to decide what matters more," Zara said. "Pride and old hatreds, or the possibility of peace. We are offering you a way to avoid bloodshed. A way to turn this contested land into a bridge between our peoples instead of a battlefield." Nolan could see the calculation shifting. The initial hostility was giving way to uncertainty, people looking at each other and whispering. The proposal was strange enough, dramatic enough, that it had broken through the momentum toward violence. Marcus stepped forward, leaving his weapon behind. "Let me understand this. You two want to get married and you want the ceremony to happen here. In the meadow?" "Yes," Nolan said. "With witnesses from both sides. A public commitment that this land belongs to all of us and that humans and orcs can find common ground." "This is insanity," Zara's uncle said, but he also stepped forward, his hand off his weapon. "Zara, you cannot mean this. Your grandmother will be heartbroken. Your mother will never forgive me for allowing it." "Then bring them here and let me tell them myself," Zara said. "Uncle, you taught me that courage means standing up for what you believe in even when it is hard. I believe in this. I believe in Nolan. And I believe our peoples can do better than fighting over a meadow." The two groups were drawing closer now, no longer in battle lines but in a loose circle around Nolan and Zara. The hostility was fading, replaced by a confused but genuine curiosity. Nolan could feel the moment balanced on a knife edge, ready to tip either toward acceptance or rejection. Then an older woman pushed through the orc warriors, using her walking stick to clear a path. She was ancient, her skin a darker green than Zara's, her white hair long and unbound. She looked at Zara with fierce dark eyes. "Grandmother," Zara breathed. "You have been sneaking off to meet this human for months, and you did not tell me." The old woman's voice was sharp. "I am disappointed in your dishonesty, child. I am sorry, grandmother. I did not know how to explain. You explain by using your words as I taught you." But the old woman's expression softened slightly. She turned to Nolan, looking him up and down with an appraising eye. "You are the one who makes my granddaughter smile when she thinks no one is watching," Nolan swallowed. "I hope so, yes. And you want to marry her, knowing it will make you an outcast from your own people." "I want to marry her because she makes me want to live again. Everything else is just details." The old woman studied him for a long moment, then turned to Marcus. "What say you, human headman? Will you allow this?" Marcus looked uncomfortable. "It is not my decision alone. The village council would need to approve any treaty. But you have influence. You could support it or condemn it." The old woman tapped her walking stick on the ground. "I am Zara Kova, elder and healer of the hill clans. And I say this, if my granddaughter has chosen this man, I will not stand against her. She is wise beyond her years, and I trust her judgment. If a marriage between them can prevent bloodshed and create peace, then I bless it." The weight of her authority settled over the gathering. Zara's uncle looked torn, but he slowly nodded. "If Mother Zara supports this, then I will not oppose it, but the other clan elders must agree. They will agree if I tell them to, Kara said tartly. I am old enough that everyone is afraid to contradict me. It is one of the few advantages of living this long. There was a ripple of laughter from the orc side, easing the tension further. Marcus cleared his throat. I think the village council would be willing to discuss a treaty of shared ground, especially if it means avoiding a fight none of us really want. But Nolan, are you sure about this? Marrying an orc will change your life forever. I am sure. Nolan looked at Zara, at her green skin and dark eyes and the small tusks that pressed against her lip when she tried not to smile. I have never been more sure of anything. Then we have much to discuss, Marcus said, but not with weapons in our hands. Let us sit together and talk like civilized people, and figure out the details of this treaty and this wedding. The change in the meadow was almost physical, like a great pressure releasing. Weapons were lowered, people sat down in the grass, and for the first time in anyone's memory, humans and orcs began to negotiate without hostility. Nolan and Zara stood at the center of it all, their hands still clasped, hardly daring to believe that their desperate plan had worked. The discussion took hours. There were arguments and raised voices and moments when it seemed like everything would collapse back into conflict. But Zara Kova proved to be a formidable negotiator, and Marcus was more open-minded than Nolan had expected. Slowly, painfully, a framework emerged. The meadow would become shared common ground, open to both communities for gathering, grazing, and peaceful recreation. Neither side would build permanent structures or station armed forces. Disputes about the meadow would be settled by a council of representatives from both groups, meeting quarterly to ensure the treaty held. And the treaty would be sealed by the marriage of Nolan Drayton and Zara Kova, to take place in the meadow at the spring equinox, witnessed by both peoples. It was not a perfect solution, and everyone had compromises they had to swallow. But it was a solution that did not involve blood, and in the end, that was what mattered most. As the sun set on that long day, both groups began to disperse, heading back to their respective communities to explain what had happened. Zara's grandmother stayed behind, leaning on her walking stick and watching as Nolan and Zara stood together in the fading light. You have chosen a hard path, Kara said to them both. There will be people on both sides who resent this treaty, who see your marriage as a betrayal. You will need to be strong. We will be, Zara said, together. Good, Kara smiled, showing small tusks worn down with age. Then I will prepare the proper herbs for the ceremony. A spring wedding should have blessings for growth and new beginnings. She looked at Nolan. Take care of my granddaughter, human. She is precious to me. I will protect her with my life, Nolan promised. See that you do. Kara patted Zara's cheek affectionately, then made her slow way down the hill toward the orc settlement, leaving Nolan and Zara alone in the meadow. They stood in silence for a moment, both of them still processing what had happened. Then Zara started to laugh, a slightly hysterical sound. We did it. We actually did it. I cannot believe that worked. Neither can I. Nolan pulled her into his arms, holding her close. You were amazing. So fierce and brave. I was terrified. I thought my uncle was going to drag me home and never let me out again. Your grandmother is formidable. She likes you, I could tell. Zara pulled back enough to look at his face, her expression turning serious. Nolan, are you really ready for this? For marriage, for joining your life to mine. There is still time to change your mind. I do not want to change my mind, do you? No, but I want to make sure you know what you are agreeing to. You will be tied to the orc clans through me. Some humans will never accept that. And some orcs will never accept you marrying a human. We will face prejudice from both sides. Nolan cupped her face in his hands. But, Zara, When I am with you, I feel more alive than I have in years. You brought me back from the edge of giving up. I want to build a life with you, whatever that looks like." She kissed him then, deep and slow, and Nolan felt something settle in his chest that had been restless since Marion died. Not the same as what he had felt for his first wife, because Zara was not Marion and never would be. But something equally real, equally important. When they finally pulled apart, the stars were beginning to come out. Nolan looked up at them, at the vast spread of sky above the meadow, and felt a sense of rightness he had been missing for so long. "We should go," Zara said reluctantly. "I need to talk to my family, explain everything properly. My mother is probably beside herself with worry. And I need to face the village council formally. There will be questions." They walked to the edge of the meadow together, then parted ways with one more kiss and a promise to meet again soon. Nolan watched Zara disappear into the darkness toward the hills, then turned and made his own way back to Millbrook. The next weeks were chaotic. There were village meetings where Nolan had to explain his relationship with Zara over and over, answering invasive questions about how they met and what his intentions were. There were people who congratulated him, others who looked at him with disgust or pity. The general consensus seemed to be that Nolan had lost his mind in his grief, but since the treaty prevented a costly conflict, they would tolerate his eccentricity. Nolan bore it all with as much patience as he could muster, keeping his focus on the larger goal. The treaty was holding. The meadow remained peaceful. And in the spring, he would marry Zara. He met with her when they could, though their time together was limited now. Both of them were busy with preparations, and both were being watched more closely by their respective communities. But they managed stolen hours in the meadow, talking about their future, making plans. "Where will we live?" Zara asked one afternoon in late autumn. The meadow was turning golden, the wildflowers giving way to late-season grasses. "Your cottage or with my family?" "I thought we could build something new," Nolan said. "A house at the edge of the meadow so we are not fully in either territory, neutral ground like the treaty." Zara's eyes lit up. "I like that. A place that is just ours. We can design it together. Big windows for light, a garden for your healing plants, a workshop for carpentry. Make it exactly what we want." They spent hours sketching plans in the dirt, laughing over their terrible drawings, imagining the life they would build. It felt real in a way that nothing had felt real to Nolan since Marion's death. He was building toward something again, creating a future instead of just enduring the present. Winter came, and the meadow disappeared under snow. Nolan and Zara could not meet as often, the weather too harsh for regular trips. But they sent messages through Kara, who seemed to take delight in playing courier between them. The old healer had become an unexpected ally, using her influence to smooth over tensions in the orc clans and to reassure Zara's worried parents. "Grandmother says Mother is starting to accept it," Zara wrote in one message. "She wants to meet you before the wedding. She says she needs to make sure you are good enough for her daughter." Nolan sent back a message saying he would be honored to meet Zara's mother, though the prospect terrified him. Meeting your future mother-in-law was stressful enough without adding the complication of different species. The meeting happened on a cold day in midwinter, in a small cabin at the edge of the meadow that served as neutral meeting ground. Zara's mother, Zara Kova, was a handsome woman in her middle years with the same dark eyes as her daughter. She looked Nolan over with an expression that gave nothing away. "So you are the human who wants to marry my daughter?" "Yes, madam. Zara tells me you were married before, that your first wife died." "That is true. Marion died of fever about 1.5 years ago." Mara's expression softened slightly. "I am sorry for your loss. It is hard to lose a partner young." She sat down, gesturing for Nolan to do the same. Zara sat between them, looking nervous. "I will be direct with you, Nolan Drayton. I am not happy about this marriage. Not because of you specifically, but because I know how hard it will be for my daughter. She will face prejudice from both our peoples. Her children will be neither fully human nor fully orc. She will never truly belong to either world." "I know," Nolan said quietly. "And if I could protect her from that pain, I would. But I cannot change what we feel for each other. What I can promise is that I will stand beside her through all of it, that I will never let her face that prejudice alone." Pretty words. But will you keep them when the reality becomes difficult? Nolan met her eyes steadily. "Your daughter pulled me back from the edge of despair. She gave me a reason to keep living when I had none. I owe her everything, and I love her more than I can properly express. So yes, I will keep my promises, no matter how difficult it becomes." Mara studied him for a long moment, then turned to Zara. "You are sure about this? Truly sure?" "I am, Mother. I love him. And I know it will be hard, but I think it will also be wonderful. We can build something new together, something that bridges our worlds. You always were an idealist." But Mara smiled, a sad and loving expression. "Very well. If this is what you want, I will support you. But know that you will always have a home with your family, no matter what happens. You are my daughter, and nothing will change that." Zara hugged her mother, both of them holding tight. Nolan looked away, giving them privacy for the emotional moment, but he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Having Mara's blessing, however reluctant, mattered more than he had realized. After that, the preparations accelerated. Nolan began building the new house at the edge of the meadow, working through the winter cold with help from a few village friends who had come around to supporting the marriage. It was hard work, but satisfying, watching the structure take shape board by board. Zara worked with her grandmother and mother to prepare for the ceremony, learning the traditional blessings and gathering the herbs that would be used. She also began teaching Nolan some of the orc language, simple phrases and words, so he would not be completely lost during the ceremony. The winter thawed into early spring, and suddenly the wedding was only weeks away. Nolan felt the old anxiety creeping back, the fear that he was somehow betraying Marion's memory by moving on so completely. But every time he saw Zara, the fear faded. Marion would have wanted him to be happy. She would have liked Zara, he thought. They both had that same fierce directness, that ability to see through nonsense to what mattered. The night before the wedding, Nolan stood alone in the meadow, looking up at the stars. The wildflowers were just beginning to bloom again, small splashes of color in the new grass. Tomorrow this place would be filled with people from both communities, witnessing a marriage that would have been unthinkable a year ago. He heard footsteps and turned to see Marcus approaching, moving carefully in the dim light. The old headman came to stand beside him, looking out over the meadow. "Could not sleep?" Marcus asked. "Too much on my mind." "Wedding nerves are natural. I barely slept the night before I married my Ellen, and we had known each other since we were children." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Marcus said, "I want you to know, Nolan, that I am proud of what you are doing, what you and Zara both are doing. It takes courage to stand up for what you believe in, especially when it means facing down prejudice and hatred. I am just trying to build a life worth living. You are doing more than that. You are building a bridge, giving our people a chance to see orcs as something other than monsters, and giving the orcs a chance to see us as more than conquerors. That matters." Nolan felt his throat tighten with emotion. "Thank you, Marcus. That means a lot. You are a good man, Nolan Drayton. Your Marion would be proud of you, and I think you and Zara are going to be very happy together." Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. "Now go get some sleep. Tomorrow is a big day." Nolan made his way back to his cottage, where he did manage a few hours of restless sleep. He woke before dawn, too keyed up to stay in bed, and spent the morning making sure everything was ready. His wedding clothes were simple but well made, a gift from several of the village women who had spent weeks sewing them. He bathed and shaved carefully, then made his way to the meadow as the sun climbed toward noon. People were already gathering, humans on one side and orcs on the other, an invisible line still dividing them even as they came together for this ceremony. But they were here and they were peaceful, and that was what mattered. Nolan took his place in the center of the meadow, his heart pounding. Marcus stood beside him as witness, looking formal in his best clothes. On the orc side, Zara Kova was preparing the blessing circle, laying out herbs and flowers in intricate patterns. Then Zara appeared, walking through the meadow with her mother and grandmother flanking her, and Nolan forgot to breathe. She wore traditional orc wedding garments, a long tunic embroidered with symbols he did not recognize, but which Zara had explained represented growth, fertility, and new beginnings. Her dark hair was unbound, flowing over her shoulders, and she had small white flowers woven into it. She was absolutely beautiful. Their eyes met across the meadow, and Zara smiled, that particular smile that was just for him. Nolan felt his own face split into a grin, unable to contain the joy rising in his chest. Zara reached him and took his hands, and Zara began the ceremony. It was a blend of human and orc traditions, prayers and blessings in both languages. Nolan repeated the words he had practiced, promising to stand beside Zara in sickness and health, in times of plenty and times of hardship, for all the days they had together. Zara made her own vows, her voice strong and clear, promising to build a life with him based on honesty, respect, and love. To face whatever challenges came with courage and grace. Zara bound their hands together with a cord woven from meadow grass, symbolizing their joining. Then she spoke a blessing in the orc language, old words that sang with power and weight. Nolan did not understand all of it, but he felt the meaning in his bones. A wish for growth, for strength, for a love that would endure. When the blessing was finished, Zara nodded to them. "You are married in the eyes of both our peoples. May your union bring peace and prosperity to all." Nolan pulled Zara close and kissed her as the crowd erupted into cheers, humans and orcs mingling their voices for the first time anyone could remember. When they finally broke apart, both of them were crying and laughing at once, overwhelmed by the enormity of what they had just done. The celebration that followed was unlike anything Nolan had experienced. Both communities had brought food and drink, and tables had been set up all through the meadow. There was music, a strange but beautiful blend of human fiddles and orc drums. People danced, talked, tentatively reached across the divide that had separated them for so long. Nolan and Zara moved through the gathering together, accepting congratulations and well wishes, watching as their two peoples slowly began to mingle. It was not perfect, and there were still those who held themselves apart, unwilling to cross the old boundaries. But it was a start. As the sun set, casting the meadow in golden light, Nolan found himself standing with Zara at the edge of the celebration, watching their people dance together. "We did it," Zara said softly. "We really did it. We did. Though I think the hard part is still ahead, building a life together. Building a life together across two worlds, making this peace stick, proving that we are not just a political symbol but two people who genuinely love each other." Zara leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. "We will figure it out, one day at a time." They stayed at the celebration until late, then finally slipped away to their new house at the edge of the meadow. It was not finished yet, but it had walls and a roof and a bed, and that was enough for now. Nolan lit a fire in the hearth while Zara changed out of her wedding garments. When she emerged in a simple nightgown, he pulled her close, just holding her for a long moment. "Are you happy?" he asked. "Happier than I ever imagined I could be." She pulled back to look at his face, her dark eyes searching his. "Are you? No regrets?" "No regrets. Only hope for the future." He kissed her softly. "Thank you for finding me in the meadow that day, for keeping me from falling off the cliff. Thank you for being someone worth knowing, worth loving." They made love that night with a tenderness that left Nolan feeling both vulnerable and complete. Afterward, lying together in their marriage bed, he thought about how strange and wonderful life could be. A year ago he had been hollow with grief, seeing no path forward. Now he was married to an orc woman he loved deeply, building a life that would bridge two communities, creating something new out of loss and hope. The months that followed were both challenging and joyful. Nolan and Zara finished their house, making it truly their own. They planted a garden together, mixing plants from both human and orc traditions. Zara set up a small healing practice, tending to injuries and illnesses from both communities, slowly building trust through her skill and kindness. Nolan continued his carpentry, taking commissions from both humans and orcs. He found that working with orc craftspeople opened up new techniques and approaches, enriching his own skills. Slowly, carefully, he and Zara built a life that honored both their backgrounds while creating something entirely new. The Meadow Treaty held through that first year, though there were tensions and disagreements. The quarterly councils that Nolan and Zara attended were sometimes heated, with old prejudices flaring up over small issues. But each time they managed to find compromises to keep the peace from shattering. In the second year of their marriage, Zara became pregnant. The news filled Nolan with joy and terror in equal measure. A child who was part human and part orc would face challenges neither he nor Zara had experienced. But it also represented hope, a living symbol of what their two peoples could build together. Their daughter was born in the early spring, during a rare warm spell that filled the meadow with early wildflowers. She had green skin lighter than Zara's, small nubbins where tusks might grow, and her father's eyes. They named her Zara Kova, and she was perfect. The birth brought both families together in a way nothing else had. Nolan's friends from the village came to see the baby, bringing gifts and well wishes. Zara's family filled the house with laughter and advice, her mother taking charge with practiced ease. For a few days, the house at the edge of the meadow became a place where humans and orcs simply existed together as family, and the larger tensions faded into irrelevance. As Lyra grew, she became a bridge in her own right. Children from both communities would come to play with her, breaking down barriers their parents still maintained. Nolan and Zara's house became a gathering place, a neutral territory where people could meet and talk without the weight of old hostilities. 3 years after their wedding, the spring gathering had become a tradition. Both communities would meet in the meadow to renew the treaty, to celebrate the peace they had built. It was a festival now, with games and food and music, and children running through the wildflowers without caring whether their playmates were human or orc. Nolan stood at the edge of this gathering, watching Lyra chase butterflies with a mixed group of children, their laughter ringing clear in the spring air. Zara came to stand beside him, slipping her hand into his. "Remember when we were terrified this day would end in bloodshed?" she asked. "I remember thinking we were going to die, or at least be exiled and living in the woods somewhere, eating roots and berries." Zara laughed. "We have done better than roots and berries, just barely." But he was grinning as he said it, looking at their daughter, at their house visible at the meadow's edge, at the two communities mingling peacefully. "We have done much better." Kara approached them, moving more slowly these days but still sharp-eyed and formidable. "The council wants you both to say a few words, to officially open the gathering." Nolan and Zara exchanged glances, then nodded. They walked together to the center of the meadow, to the same spot where they had made their desperate stand 3 years ago. The crowd quieted, humans and orcs both turning to listen. Zara spoke first. 3 years ago, this meadow was contested ground, a place of potential conflict. Today, it is shared ground, a place where our children play together and our peoples meet in peace. That transformation did not happen by accident. It happened because we all chose to see past old hatreds, to build something new. Nolan continued. "The treaty we celebrate today is not just about land. It is about the possibility of cooperation, of mutual respect. It is about recognizing that our differences can be strengths rather than sources of conflict. Zara and I are grateful to be part of this, and we hope that the peace we have built here will continue to grow." There was applause from both sides, genuine and warm. Then Marcus stepped forward, his voice carrying across the meadow. "I propose we make this official, that we name this place the Meadow of Common Ground, and that we commit to maintaining it as shared territory in perpetuity." From the orc side, Zara's uncle raised his voice in agreement. "The hill clans accept this proposal. Let this meadow stand as a symbol of what we can build together when we choose peace over conflict." The crowd erupted in cheers, and suddenly people were surging forward, humans and orcs mixing together without hesitation. There was music and dancing, children weaving between adults, the whole meadow alive with celebration. Nolan pulled Zara close, kissing her temple. "We did it. It really worked. It really worked." She turned in his arms, looking up at him with those dark eyes that still made his heart skip. "Thank you for taking a chance on a strange orc girl who watched you sleep. Thank you for not letting me roll off a cliff, literally and figuratively." They laughed together, the sound lost in the noise of the celebration around them. Lyra came running up, demanding to be lifted, and Nolan swung her onto his shoulders so she could see the whole gathering. She squealed with delight, pointing at the dancers and musicians and the children playing chase through the wildflowers. As the sun began to set, painting the meadow in shades of gold and amber, Nolan looked out over the scene and felt a deep, abiding peace. He thought of Marion, of the grief that had brought him to this meadow in the first place. He would always carry her memory, always have a place in his heart for what they had shared. But he had also built something new, something equally precious with Zara. The meadow that had once been his escape from pain had become the foundation of a new life, a bridge between worlds, a place where hope could take root and grow. He had fallen asleep here alone and desperate, and woken with his head in an orc girl's lap with no explanation. That moment had changed everything, had set in motion a chain of events that transformed not just his life but the lives of two entire communities. As darkness fell and the celebration continued by firelight, Nolan stood with his wife and daughter, surrounded by friends and family from both their worlds, and knew that he was exactly where he was meant to be. The meadow had given him back his life, and he had helped give it a new purpose. It was shared ground now, neutral territory, a place of peace and possibility, and it would remain that way for as long as he and Zara, and all the people gathered here tonight, chose to protect it. The future stretched out ahead, full of challenges and joys they could not yet imagine. But they would face it together, building on the foundation they had laid in this meadow 3 years ago. Lyra tugged on his hair, demanding his attention, and Nolan laughed and swung her down into his arms. Zara leaned against his side, the the three of them a unit, a family that embodied the possibility of harmony between different worlds. Around them, the celebration continued, laughter and music filling the spring night, and Nolan Drayton felt something he had not felt since before Marion died. Genuine, uncomplicated joy. The Meadow had saved him, Zara had healed him, and together they had helped save a peace that neither of their peoples had believed possible. It was more than enough. It was everything.